The few weeks leading up to your exams can be quite scary, but you can help control these nerves by organising your final revision well and by working to a timetable. I suggest that you spend around 5 weeks on final revision. If you spend much more time than this, then your revision period could overlap with your lectures, and it's difficult to see the course as a whole if you haven't finished it. Providing that you practice good term time study techniques as we've discussed previously, then 5 weeks of final revision should be fine. In their final revision, many students simply sit and read through their notes over and over again in the hope that the information will stick. This is a very passive, unimaginative and ineffective way of revising, and it is likely to make you very bored and maybe even depressed. However, today I am going to describe to you an example of a 5-week revision timetable which, should you choose to follow it, will help ensure that your final revision is active, varied and effective.
In this example, let's imagine that you have 6 lecture courses to revise. So that you don't risk running out of time, it's a good idea to revise each of your courses over the whole of the revision period. So for each of the 5 weeks of your final revision, you could revise course 1 every Monday, course 2 every Tuesday, course 3 every Wednesday, and so on. In order to make sense of today's lesson, it's important that you understand this.
Let's consider each of these 5 weeks in turn. In week 1, create summary sheets for each of your courses. So on Monday, you would create a summary sheet of course 1, on Tuesday, a summary sheet of course 2, Wednesday, a summary sheet of course 3, and so on. Take a large sheet of paper, say A3 or bigger, and using your study cards and lecture notes, try to summarize the whole lecture course on this single sheet of paper. Take your time over this, as it will be extremely useful in the upcoming weeks when you test yourself from memory. Your completed summary sheet could look like one large spider diagram in which you can visualize the course as a whole and see how each of the topics interrelate.
This is a summary sheet that you could create to summarize this course.
Each of the points on your summary sheet acts as a memory prompter. Your aim over the coming weeks is to be able to look at each of these points and expand upon them from memory. Each point on the summary sheet will prompt you to visualize a certain study card, or a table, a diagram, a definition, a list, an equation, a derivation, or a chunk of text, etc. from your lecture notes. Once you are happy with your summary sheet, spend the rest of the day memorizing your study cards and summary sheet and learning things by heart. Creating summary sheets for each of your courses and spending time memorizing them means that by the end of your first week, you will have a broad understanding of each of your courses and you will be well on the way to committing the information to memory. Each day of week 2, test yourself from memory. Place your summary sheet in front of you and look through all of the topics and headings and test yourself by writing things out from memory. Prepare diagrams from memory, write lists from memory, write definitions and equations and chemical reactions, write facts and figures and chunks of text, all from memory. Whenever you get stuck or you want to check that you've remembered something correctly, then refer to your study cards and lecture notes. You may find yourself referring to your study cards and notes quite often. However, as you repeat this process over the coming weeks, you will find yourself referring to your study cards and notes less and less frequently.
To further test your recall and understanding, in week 2, also spend some time solving relevant problems from your textbooks. Also, go back over the topics discussed in your tutorials and seminars, and again, attempt any relevant questions. Spend each day of week 3 predicting examination questions. Most students try to guess which questions are likely to be included in their examinations. This can be a useful exercise, particularly if you haven't studied well throughout the term. For those students who have studied well throughout the term, considering past papers and trying to predict possible examination questions is still a very valuable revision exercise.
Here are 2 approaches that you can take when trying to predict possible examination questions. Firstly, check through your notes and look for areas or topics that your lecturer drew particular attention to. If your lecturer focused on a specific topic and devoted a lot of time to discussing it, then this can be a strong indicator that it will be examined. Secondly, look carefully at the examination papers for the last 2 or 3 years. Look for questions that are frequently asked. Many examiners have certain topics that they set a question on every year. Take care when using this approach, however, because if a certain aspect of the course is examined every year, it is unlikely that you will have exactly the same question in your exam as has been said previously. You may get a question that relates to the same topic, but it is unlikely to be identical. It is therefore a useful exercise to write out a number of variations of these questions: analyse, define, explain, describe, compare, etc. Then for each of the questions in your list, prepare a plan of the answer that you would give if you were faced with this question in your exam. Often in revision, it is sufficient to write a plan of your answer as opposed to spending time writing the answer out in full. This allows you to consider a large range of topics in a short space of time.
Having identified areas which are frequently examined, spend some time reading selected passages from textbooks on these areas. Spend whatever time you have left each day studying your summary sheet and memorising your study cards.
Each day of week 4, set yourself at least 1 mock exam paper and try to complete them under exam conditions. By this, I mean try to complete each paper in the time that would be available to you in your exam and without referring to your notes or study aids. When preparing a mock exam, include questions from actual past papers and questions that you have written yourself. When preparing questions yourself, you can use past paper questions for inspiration. You could also ask a friend who is on the same course to create some questions for you, and you could do the same for them in return.
Completing answers to suitable questions under examination conditions, i.e. without your notes and in the time that would be available to you in your exam, is excellent exam preparation. Once again, spend whatever time you have left each day studying your summary sheet and memorising your study cards.
As with week 4, each day of this final week set yourself at least 1 mock exam. And once again, spend whatever time you have left each day studying your summary sheet and memorising your study cards. Pay particular attention to topics which you think are likely to be examined, and then read around these areas from suitable textbooks. Ensure that you take all of the appropriate materials with you to your exam. Sharpened pencils, a pencil sharpener, pens, a ruler, pencil erasers, a calculator, and any other items that you are likely to need or that you are allowed to use. Examination centres should always have a large visible clock so that you can monitor the time during your exam. But it's often a good idea to take a watch with you or a small silent clock. In an exam, time management is crucial. By following the study techniques that I've described to you, Throughout the term and in the weeks leading up to your exams, then on the day of your exam, you should not feel worried or stressed. Imagine how an athlete feels just before a race. Having put in months and months of training, he would feel full of energy, he would be pumped with adrenaline, he would feel ready for action, ready to perform, and keen to show what he is capable of. This is how he should feel before an exam.